This axe head sat forgotten in my shop all winter, and by spring it was covered in rust. The orange, flaky, crumbling kind. The kind that eats a good tool right down to nothing. Now watch what happens. I brushed one thing onto that rust, waited about an hour, and the orange is gone. In its place is this dark blue-black finish, hard and smooth, bonded right down into the steel. And here is the part that ought to stop you cold. That black finish is not paint. It is not a coating I laid on top. It used to be the rust itself turned into the protection. $3 one afternoon, and the rust did not just stop. It went to work for me. This is not something I invented. Nobody did. The Japanese were doing a version of it 700 years ago. Roman leatherworkers stumbled onto it by accident. Blacksmiths all over the old world found it on their own because the chemistry is that plain once you are paying attention. But somewhere in the last 100 years, as the hardware store shelf filled up with bottles, folks just stopped passing it down. My name is Richard Nakamura. I grew up in a Japanese house in Ohio, and I spent 30 years as a repairman. If there is one thing my mother drilled into me, it is a single word: mottainai. You do not throw away a good thing. That rusty axe, that seized-up wrench, that cast iron pan your grandmother left you with the orange creeping across it, none of that is garbage. It is a good thing waiting on the right chemistry. So today, I am going to show you what that chemistry is, where the Japanese found it, and how to do it for a few dollars with stuff you can get anywhere. And I am going to be honest with you about what it does and what it does not do, which is more than that $30 bottle will ever be. Let me start with the Japanese, since that is where I first heard of it as a boy. In Japan, they have a thing they call kakishibu, and it is nothing fancier than the juice of unripe persimmons, crushed and left to ferment. That juice is almost pure tannin, the same bitter stuff that dries out your mouth when you drink strong tea. For 700 years, they brushed it onto everything they needed to last. Fishing nets, so the seawater would not rot them. The wood of their houses. The paper of their umbrellas. When that persimmon tannin met iron, the iron turned a deep, weathered black, and it stopped rusting. They did not have a chemistry book to explain it. They just watched what worked and passed it down. Half a world away, Roman tanners found the very same thing in their oak bark pits, and their blacksmiths started soaking tools in it before a long campaign. Every people that worked iron and had trees full of tannin arrived at the same answer on their own. That is not a legend. That is just chemistry being plain to anybody who watched closely. So here is what is actually going on, and once you see it, you will never look at rust the same way again. Rust is just iron that is taken up with oxygen, iron oxide. It is loose and flaky, and it spreads because it does not hold tight to the good metal underneath. Tannin, the stuff in tea and oak bark and those persimmons, has a real hunger for iron. Brush it onto rust, and the tannin grabs the iron right out of that oxide and locks it into a brand new compound called ferric tannate. And ferric tannate is a different animal altogether. It is blue-black, it will not dissolve in water, and it bonds down tight to the steel. So in the place of a loose orange crust that keeps eating your tool, you have got a hard, dark skin that guards it. The rust did not get covered up, it got converted. The disease turned into the cure. You have seen this your whole life without ever knowing its name. That dark stain that blooms on a cast iron pan when you cook something with tomatoes in it. That is tannin meeting iron. the blue-black ink in a medieval manuscript that is held for 800 years, that is iron and oak gall tannin. This is not some backyard guess either. The Canadian Conservation Institute, the people who preserve museum pieces, meant to outlast all of us. They publish this exact treatment for rusted iron. The same chemistry that guards a museum's iron is the chemistry you are about to mix in a coffee cup for a few dollars. Now, the title of this says forever, and I owe you the honest truth on that word because I am not that $30 bottle, and I am not going to lie to you. Here is what the museum folks themselves say, and what I will say right along with them. This is not a magic force field. That black layer is not truly permanent, and it will not stand up to heavy salt, to sea air, or to a truck frame soaking in road salt all winter long. What it is a real and lasting fix. It converts the rust you have and it holds the line, and with a 20-minute touch-up once a season, it keeps a good tool sound for decades. I have got tools hanging on my wall that I did this to 12 years ago, and they have not gone past a faint gray shadow since. So when I say forever, I mean a tool you never have to throw away. I do not mean a tool that beats chemistry. Honest is more useful than impressive. Let me tell you how I really came to trust it. Years back, I had a whole bench of tools I had let get away from me. A mattock left out one too many winters. A draw hoe I had owned since I was a young man that I just could not bring myself to replace. I had wire brushed them, hit them with oil, and 6 months on the orange always crept back. Then I mixed up a batch of this, and I spent one quiet afternoon working my way down that whole bench, brushing it on and watching. I will tell you, it was the most satisfying afternoon I had spent in a long while. You lay it on and the color shifts right there in front of you, orange to gray to that deep blue-black, slow enough that you just stand and watch it happen. The soft scrape of the brush, that earthy smell like strong forest tea. There is something in a man that settles right down, watching a thing he thought was ruined come back whole in his own 2 hands. Those tools are still on my wall. That was 12 years ago now. So here is exactly how you do it, and it is almost too simple. I will give it to you 2 ways, and both of them use things you can get without any trouble at all. The first way is the one you can do tonight with what is already in your kitchen. Brew up a small pot of black tea, and I mean strong, 4 or 5 bags in a cup of water, dark as coffee. That tea is full of tannin. Let it cool, brush it right onto light rust on a tool or a pan, and you will watch it start to darken. It is the weakest version, so save it for small things and light surface rust. But it is real, it works, and it costs you pennies. The second way is the one I would trust on anything that matters, and it is where that $3 comes in. You want food-grade tannic acid powder. You just search those exact words, food-grade tannic acid, at a health store or online, and a small bag runs $3 to $5 and will treat more metal than you have got in your whole garage. Now, here is the one step most folks skip, and it makes all the difference. A little phosphoric acid. It helps the tannin dig deeper, and it locks down the rest of the rust into another stable compound. You already know it by its common name, navel jelly, $2 or $3 at any hardware store. The folks who studied this closely landed on about 3 parts tannic acid to 10 parts phosphoric as the strongest mix. Rounded off, you do not need a laboratory. To put it together, stir a spoon of the tannic acid powder into a cup of warm water until it goes the color of strong black tea, and mix in a spoon of the navel jelly. That is your solution, and it costs about $3. Take a wire brush and knock off only the loose, flaking rust, the stuff already falling away on its own. Do not go grinding it down to shiny, bare metal. That is the mistake people make. The tannin needs rust to react with, so you leave the rust that is still holding on and you just clear off the junk. Brush the solution on in an even coat, and then just watch. Inside 10-15 minutes, the color starts to turn, orange to gray to blue-black, right there before your eyes. That is the conversion happening, the ferric tannate forming in real time. Let it dry a few hours. And here is a tip straight from those museum folks. Do a second thin coat instead of one thick one, because a thin coat dries down tight and a thick one can flake off on you. Once that has cured, you seal it. On a tool or an axe head, a wipe of boiled linseed oil or a little beeswax. On a garden gate or a patio set, a coat of paint, which now grips better than it ever would have on bare steel. On a cast iron pan, wipe it on the rust spots, let it convert, and re-season it in the oven the way you always would. One thing to expect, because it throws people every time. It does not come out looking like fresh paint. It looks like the metal just went darker, a little bit metallic. Some folks see that and figure it did not work. It worked. That blue-black is the whole point. That is the protection. One more thing, and this one ought to open your eyes. Next time you are at the hardware store, walk down the rust aisle and pick up one of those rust converter bottles, the $15, the $20, the $30 ones. Turn the bottle around and read the ingredients on the back. Tannic acid, right there at the top. It is the very same thing you just mixed for $3, poured into a fancy bottle with a big word on the front. Now, I am not going to tell you some corporation locked this away in a vault. It is simpler than that, and honestly, a little sadder. There is just no money in teaching a man to fix his own tools for $3. That bottle on the shelf is counting on you coming back for another one next year. The knowledge did not get buried. It just quietly stopped getting handed down, one generation at a time, while the shelf filled up. So the next time you go to pitch a rusted tool, or that cast iron pan, or you catch yourself eyeing a new one because the old one went orange, stop yourself. $3 and one quiet afternoon. The rust on that thing is not a problem waiting for an expensive fix. It is a raw material waiting on the right chemistry. Tell me down in the comments what you are going to bring back first, the axe, the garden tools, the old cast iron, and come back and tell me when you watch that color turn, because it truly is something to see. And if your father or your grandfather had a way of saving a tool that I did not name here, put it down there and share it, because those are exactly the things that vanish when nobody bothers to write them down. I read every one. My grandmother used to tell me about mottainai. It means nothing good should ever be wasted. Not the thing in your hands, and not the knowing of how to keep it.